Hello everyone and welcome back to game week 2 of the 25-26 Slater and Gordon Premiership. We join myself, Ryan Sipple, alongside Charlie McClellan for the first game of the day on Court B, which will be contested between Villa Rockets and Aspire. Let's go through the squads to begin and we can talk about how these two fared in their fixtures yesterday and what is to come. Villa Rockets comprised of the following: Nicky Baker, Bobby Allen, Dave Lewis, Hamza Madir, Kieran Burns, Rosie Hodgson and Amir Ali. And for Aspire, they have Sally McNeil, Dan McClellan, John Baldwin, Jordan Williams, Rich George, Tom Kelly and John Dixon. Charlie, how are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Looking forward to this. It's a great day. We're calling it Super Sunday because it's just a fantastic day of Powerchair football. Some great games on both courts. Fortunately, they overlap a lot, which is annoying, so I'm going to have to sort of sit right in the middle of the two and just sort of split screen it, I think, today. But no, it's going to be a fantastic day of Powerchair football. Looking forward to it, and yeah, great way to start with Aspire versus Villa.
Yeah, absolutely. Aspire continue their fine form in their fixtures yesterday. 2 wins from as many games sees them maintain their position at the top of the standings. 19 points from their opening 7 games, so they have that 3-point buffer over Teesside and 2 over Teesside, who are playing one another on Court A currently. A huge game also live on the WFA's YouTube. Villa also had a fantastic round of fixtures yesterday. 2 wins sees them climb at the standings slightly, put a bit of safety between themselves and them jeopardy spots towards the bottom. But as you can see on your screens, there is 2 or 3 distinctive packs. You've got probably from Aspire to Leeds, really hopeful of securing the 25-26 Premiership title, and then teams maybe in transition, almost unknown entities in West Brom, Newcastle and Villa. And then you'd probably say between Middlesbrough down to Muscle Warriors, anything, the ultimate ambition surely is just maintaining Premiership survival, don't you think?
Yeah, I think you've got that spot on in terms of the way the table's now broken up into a couple of different sort of packs. I'd say, you know, Aspire will want to end this weekend on top because it's like a morale boost, isn't it, being top of the league at Christmas, although there's still a long way to go after that, but super tight. It really could go a number of ways. There's probably, as you mentioned, 4 teams now that are really seriously looking at themselves as title contenders.
Yeah, I think Aspire will probably be hoping for a stalemate between Teesside and Greenbank, which will further extend their advantage at the top. Certainly if they're able to get 3 points here. An interesting subplot to both games going on Court A and Court B is this race for top goal scorer. Dan McClellan and Mitch Tinkler locked on 10 goals apiece. Anything that Dan does, Mitch seems to match, and it's going to likely go right down to the conclusion in game week 5 because they're 2 of the brightest young players, not just in the country but anywhere worldwide. Let's clear those graphics so you can see the central referee. Ian Harley has the captains of John Baldwin and Amir Ali in the centre. We are soon to be underway, and as you said, Charlie, very much Super Sunday. Let's go through the schedule very quickly. Certainly for Court B, we have Throssels versus West Bromwich Albion up next, so a derby to follow this. Muscle Warriors, GBG Knights, Leeds versus Teesside, another absolutely huge game. GBG Knights, Throssels, Newcastle, Middlesbrough and Greenbank, Throssels, all being contested on Court B. Ian Harley readies himself. Thumbs up from Tom Kelly, thumbs up from Amir Ali. We are seconds away from kick-off. Should there be any updates on Court A, we'll bring you them as soon as possible, but WFA scoreline app is also the perfect place to track the information and scores live, and we're now officially underway. Villa Rockets versus Aspire.
Yeah, it's going to be a really good fixture. They've played each other several times this season already in the regional league, the West Midlands Regional League, but they're yet to face each other in the Premiership.
Already beautiful, expansive passing football between the high and wide wingers of Aspire. Hamza Madir forced into an early save, and now Dave Lewis desperately going to try and break that press and spearhead something of himself. John Bolden a little bit too aggressive there. Neither of those two players will want to shy away from a coming together. Former teammates at international level. So they'll know each other's game very well as Dave Lewis tries to flick it down to Rosie Hodgson. Another very interesting subplot, playing against her former side.
Yeah, I would have liked to see John Dixon pick that ball off. A bit too passive, allowed Villa to steal the ball and go forward. Obviously, yeah, you mentioned Rosie Hodgson, first time playing against Aspire with Villa in the Premiership. I'm sure it will be conflicting emotions. She had a very successful time at Aspire, but looking for a new challenge.
Dan McClellan into John Bolden, doesn't necessarily have the angle John Bolden would have wanted to pick out John Dixon on the alternate wing, but Dixon keeps the play live, exchanging those short snappy passes around Dave Lewis. Nice feinted and weighted pass there from the Aspire captain out to Dan McClellan, picked off back to John Dixon, 180 across the face of goal. That is a brilliant save from Hamza Madir.
Yeah, what a save and what a move from Aspire. The use of just all parts of the chair from the Aspire players, passing that ball around. Fantastic work.
Yeah, very much so. Just see how sharp they are. This is a team desperate of regaining that Premiership title. Picked off to John Dixon. He's going to let that roll into his 180. Blocked by the back wheel of Hamza Madir. Fast-paced football here. Once again, Hamza Madir desperately trying to prevent it. 180 shot from Dan McClellan, saved this time by Amir Ali. Absolutely relentless from the European champions.
Yeah, Aspire have started this game very well. Moving the ball with such pace and precision. Villa, yeah, they've got a long 40 minutes ahead of them if they're just going to try and defend against that.
Down to Dave Lewis. John Dixon now on the alternate wing from what we come to expect, and that probably is one of the reasons why he can't quite connect on that 180. There is a big difference between rotating one way and the other, clockwise or counterclockwise. Just like in the running game, players will have a preferential side to strike the ball on or rotate, and I think it's clear that John Dixon is much more proficient when he's operating on the left wing of Aspire, the right as you're viewing it currently.
Yeah, and I think Dan does traditionally prefer the right as well. So they complement each other very nicely.
Into the 180 of Dan McClellan, looking to return to John Dixon. Can Villa weather this storm? Teesside have gone a goal up on Court A. Tyler Reeve after 8 minutes. A huge goal for them in their season.
More chair issues for Torbjorn Quarup, I saw, so he's had to be taken off, which is a nightmare for Greenbank considering the fixtures they've got today.
Struck goal bound, cleared off the the line by Amir Ali, waved away by Ian Harley. Pete Taylor on the far side has his flag waved high in the air. Just trying to understand the official's decision.
Yeah, just a bit of contact between Dan McClellan and the back of the chair of Hamza Madir. You can't really make any contact with the back of someone else's chair. Bumper to bumper, especially in England, is traditionally allowed, but it's a big no-no.
John Dixon now. Back to John Balding. Can't quite squeeze it through that gap. Tom Kelly merely a spectator in the opening 6 minutes. Maybe he'll be tested here. Villa haven't been able to break as far as this by goalkeeper. John Balding breaks away, tries to push it in the path of John Dixon. Well read by Hamza Madir, which just limited the space and the angle. But they're starting to get their passing going again with Dan McClellan in the centre, across the court, blocked by Dave Lewis. Patient from Balding. That's a rare mistake. Just waited for that gap to present itself, and in doing so, the ball just rolled away from his front bumper. Dixon. Cut out by Dave Lewis. If you thought this was a tough start for Villa Rockets, when you assess their fixtures today, it is going to be incredibly tough for them to secure any points. 3 games, which is quite unfamiliar on a Sunday. They play West Brom up next at 1:55 before ending 4:15 fixture against Leeds. So them 6 points they got yesterday, absolutely huge when you consider Aspire. Next up against Greenbank, another huge 6-point affair towards the top of the standings. So Super Sunday most definitely, as Rosie Hodgson trying to break away. It's the right intent from John Dixon into Dan McClellan. The angle's just not there, but it ricochets kindly to John Dixon and cut out by Hamza Madir eventually. Villa just don't have a second to breathe, do they?
No, they're defending really resolutely though. They've got a real strong shape, and Dave Lewis doing his stuff at the edge of the box really well. Hamza Madir alert at all times. Better from Villa, but intercepted by John Balding. Perhaps over telegraphed what they were going to do.
Dan McClellan patiently waits, controls it, rotates back to John Balding into John Dixon. Can see what he was trying to do, but Hamza Madir reads the game so well. Such an underrated player.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Hamza Madir. I think he's got such quality. He's really good both, going forward in terms of he's got a real good ball striking on him, but also defensively, just an absolute wall at the back for Villa, and has been for a number of seasons now.
There's the initial distribution there from that goal kick, which just set away Rosie. He's now trying to spearhead that press at the focal point. Seems to be central to all of Villa's intentions. He fires it down to Dave Lewis into the 180. Hamza Madir just patiently waits for that ball to settle. Now Dan McClellan in reverse. That's nice play from Dan McClellan, so sensible, just to use his chair to block off Hamza Madir.
Yeah, good patience from the number 7.
Starting to get very congested in the centre. Crossfield ball from Dan McClellan once again, cut out by Hamza Madir.
contentious 2-on-1 given in favour of Villa, which does relieve the pressure.
10 minutes played, still Villa 0, Aspire 0. You wonder whether the longer this remains goalless, the more it will play into Villa's hands, and maybe we'll see signs of frustration creep into Aspire's game. But currently they've done incredibly well. This is the first involvement of Tom Kelly in the fixture. Very important for him to maintain that concentration as it breaks into Bubba into Rosie Hodgson.
Yeah, good from Bubba there.
Across the court. Two on one in favour.
Such a delicate thing that Aspire have to do to try and find these gaps in the Villa defence. They are there and they've managed to do it on maybe 1 or 2 occasions, but they need to start finding it on a more consistent basis.
McClellan down as far as Dave Lewis. Slightly square that pass behind John Dixon, so doesn't generate the angle or the purchase needed to bypass Dave Lewis. I feel like have definitely settled into this game.
Yeah, they're very strong defensively, Villa. They always have been, to be fair. They're trying, and they're using these set pieces especially as a real chance.
Back to Boulding. Probably would have liked to have seen him try and go over to John Dixon there. So congested. I think the game plan is to get the ball where Hamza Madir isn't.
It's going to have to be.
And McClellan just needs to drop off. He wins the corner, most definitely played off the front bumper of Amir Ali. Without question, that was played off the front bumper of Amir Ali.
I mean, the official, yeah. You'd expect the officials to maybe see that. We have a great view of it, but they were stood right next to us.
So let off for Villa that. I know it kissed the post as well, but there was definitely a secondary touch as Rosie Hodgson can't connect on her rotated spin kick. McClellan blocked by Hamza Madir. John Boulding taking his time. John Dixon probably the option. Into Dixon, slightly forced. Have to play it round Hamza Madir. Better into Dan McClellan. 180 shot cleared on the line by Amir Ali. Rosie Hodgson almost caught in two minds as to how to best engage that ball. In doing so, allows John Boulding to get goal side.
Yeah, would have maybe liked to see Dan McClellan go back across in that instance. Getting quite a lot of shots away as far, but they're all just shooting at, you know, a wall of chairs.
Spire don't seem overly phased. 14.5 minutes in, which they're going to want to maintain. The second any signs of frustration creep in, I think the experience of Villa will capitalise. You consider the careers of Dave Lewis, Amir Ali, even the likes of Nicky Baker and Rosie Hodgson, one of the most experienced squads in the entire National League.
Lots of 2-on-1s going against Aspire. It's the positioning of Dave Lewis that's forcing them to be quite close together, Dan McClellan and John Boulding.
This is a unique switch up though for Villa, with Amir Ali pushing up the court. They switch back to their usual setup now. Dave Lewis, you can see he's playing for the corner, goes as much as a kick in. Again, Amir Ali now supporting the attack. Blocked by John Boulding. Strong play from Dan McClellan. Boulding. Potential 2-on-1 there. All right, decision from Ian Harley. Slight miscommunication between John Boulding and Dan McClellan.
Dave Lewis riling up the fans. He's happy with that one.
Hamza Madir down to Dave Lewis. Cut out by John Boulding. Half time on court A. Seaside take a narrow lead into the break. Here on court B, still nothing to separate Villa and Aspire.
Very finely balanced.
Hodgson to Dave Lewis. Has a sight, a goal, has a secondary effort just wide of the left hand post. That's the best opportunity they've had all game. You can see they're growing in confidence.
Yeah, they've really grown into this.
In their meetings in the 24-25 season, Aspire very much with the bragging rights, a 3-0 win and a 3-1 win. Strong appeals from Dave Lewis.
Fuming.
Smile on the face of the referee. Into John Dixon. Again, never really had the angle in the way he was shaped up. Hamza Madir approaching the final minute of the first half. It was a relentless opening 5-10 minutes for Aspire, but since that, probably say that Villa potentially the better of the two sides. And
yeah, their game against Newcastle yesterday, Aspire followed a similar pattern, a relentless first, quarter of the game. Then the second quarter was probably their worst period. It was the same against Sevenoaks, actually.
You put a lot of energy into that opening 5-10 minutes because we all know how important those first goals can be in a match of Powerchair football. But if you overexert yourself, you use all of your energy and momentum in that opening few minutes and aren't able to break the deadlock. It can sometimes play into the opposition's hands. As Dan McClellan strikes it goal bound. Beautiful angling from Hamza Madir once again. John Dixon with a secondary effort off the back of Amir Ali. That's better from Aspire. First sight of goal in probably 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, much better.
Can they build on it? 10 seconds remaining. John Boulding Trying to flick it, and a potential breakaway here for Villa. John Balding with a little bit of contact. Dave Lewis isn't overly happy with it, but I don't think there's anything cynical, and he gives as good as he gets. Dave Lewis has to be careful. I understand his frustration. There was a little bit of tapping, but that follow-up foul, potentially yellow card worthy. But I like it, a bit of fire as John Dixon has an attempt at goal. Once again blocked by Hamza Madir, the whistle in the mouth of Ian Harley. So I suspect this will be the last of the first half. Trying to sneak it through. Doesn't have time to have the corner. Half-time, fiery, frantic, with flashes of quality. Thank you to all that are tuning in, to myself and Charlie. We'll be back very shortly for the second. Hello everyone and welcome back to the second half of Villa Rockets versus Aspire, currently 0-0, approaching the second. Let me just show you the live league table very, very quickly so you can see how this game and the game currently on court A impact the overall look of things. You can see Aspire still top of the standings, but do gift away for a Teesside to get a way back in with that game in hand. So they're going to desperately want to secure the win here. Can they right the wrongs of the first half and find a way to break Villa down?
Yeah, they'll back themselves to be able to get a goal in the second half. Scored in the second half of games in a couple of their narrow wins this season against Teesside and against Newcastle. Villa obviously a different kind of opponent.
Dan McClellan. It's a really fiery battle between these two. Teams unchanged from that finished the first half. Amir Ali, Hamza Madir, Dave Lewis, Rosie Hodgson for Villa Rockets. Tom Kelly, John Balding, Dan McClellan, John Dixon for Aspire. As it goes central, fired high off the chair of Dave Lewis. John Balding gets the angle to locate John Dixon, who can't do anything really to prevent that ricochet coming off the side of his chair. Nice cut back from Dan McClellan. That effort disappointing from John Balding, and Rosie Hodgson now can put some pressure on her former team. Cleared by Tom Kelly. Played off Hamza Madir. Aspire kick in. Teesside have doubled their advantage on court A. Could be a fantastic win for them. Dan McClellan, full rotation into John Balding. John Dixon doesn't get the purchase.
Usually so dependable with his ball contact, John Dixon, a rare misstep.
Balding straight away pressured and closed down by Dave Lewis. He can't keep the ball in play. I wonder if we will see Ian Harley go to his book at any point in this second half. That 50-50 battle between Balding and Lewis, so hotly contested.
Yeah, 2-on-1 against Villa between Lewis and Amir Ali. I think they're just a bit too involved in and around the penalty area, Dave Lewis. Ali wasn't aware.
John Dixon's coming over to take. It's either the front bumper of John Balding or the side swipe of Dan McClellan. Goes for the former, out for a kick in.
Well defended by Villa.
Goal kick. Hamza Madir. Dead central to Dave Lewis. Possession maintained by John Balding. Again, heavy trapping of the ball. I think the officials have actually done a good job to facilitate this fixture so far.
They've allowed it to be a very physical battle, which has suited the game.
Dan McClellan, John Balding, way too close to one another. That is several they've given away in this fixture. That's just the type of game it is. It's so congested in certain areas. Out to Rosie Hodgson. Flicks it up the line, met by John Balding. Appeals waved away. Dave Lewis tries to pressure Tom Kelly. Corner ball has been given, but I don't agree with that, nor do the look on Dave Lewis's face is, I think...
Yeah, he's just come over and just like laugh with us. Unbelievable.
He'd definitely come off his back wheel. And
the thing is, Pete Westmoreland signalled for a goal kick, so I don't know what changed his mind.
Spire weren't given one in the first half. Villa have been in the second, and if they score here, it could be a big moment into the side of John Balding. Pressure resumed by Amit Ali. Rosie Hodgson strikes towards goal. Have to weather the storm. But Villa have committed players forward. If Dan McClellan can break. Such a physical player, Dave Lewis.
Yeah, he's having a great
nice
game.
Switch of play from John Balding, returned by Dan McClellan. Just can't quite get the angle to set himself away. But I think you have to give Dave Lewis credit for the task in which he's performing. He is the great disruptor. Into John Dixon, over to Dan McClellan. Flicks it goal bound! Quick, clinical, brilliant. Aspire finally break the deadlock after 27 minutes.
Yeah, massive goal, because you could just feel this game simmering. Dan McClellan, cheeky flicking at that near post. Oh, Villa will be frustrated. They've defended so well and they started that second half fantastically. But a big goal from Dan McClellan. He scored a few of those this weekend already. The penalty against Newcastle yesterday, and Aspire take the lead.
Yeah, massive, massive moment. Arguably against the run of play.
Definitely based on the second half.
Certainly based on the second half. And Villa will be deflated with that because they were putting in a real good show. There is a look of deflation on the face of Dave Lewis, who's put in such a mammoth effort to prevent that exact thing from occurring.
I do think mentally Aspire have been the much better side in this game, though. I did sense maybe a sense of, you know, that moment in the first half when Dave Lewis won a 2-on-1. It was like a quarter of an hour in and he came over and he celebrated it and got the fans up. And I just thought, is that the smartest mentality to have in this game? Because Aspire have looked pretty relaxed, to be honest. You haven't really seen the signs of desperation sneaking in yet. No,
you haven't, but I suspected that had we got to 30, 35 minutes, there'd been panic and frustration. So getting that goal when they did, so important.
Yeah, I think Villa maybe fired up a bit too early. If they'd really gone for it in the last 10 minutes and let Aspire get frustrated, that would have been the much better mentality to have, I think, as John Dixon just swipes into the side of Dave Lewis, who, whether good or bad, has been involved in pretty much every action of this game.
He is a player I love to watch.
He's box office, Dave Lewis.
He certainly is. But overall, I think it's a fantastic performance from Villa. I think they'll take a lot of positives from this, even if the points don't go their way. And ahead of such a big day, if they can take this sort of level of confidence and performance into their games against West Brom and Leeds, be very intriguing to see the outcome. I think just based on momentum, based on the standings, player profiles, they're probably looking at that West Brom game as the one which will most likely yield points, but still an incredibly tough fixture as Greenbank, I think, half the deficit on court A. Fantastic fixture. 2-1 currently in favour of Teesside. Can they secure an equaliser? Not long left. There are just about 7 minutes left on that one.
I think that's really interesting that they've managed to pull one back, Greenbank. That'll be a crazy comeback if they manage to pull it off.
Neither of these sides have looked to utilise any of their substitutes as of yet. Sally McNeil, Jordan Williams, Rich George for Aspire, Kieran Burns, Nicky Baker and Bobby Allen waiting in the wings for Villa.
Wouldn't surprise me if we did see one of those Aspire substitutes in the next 10 minutes, try and just freshen things up. Well done by Dan McClellan. Rich George on. He was... Greg Baxter and I were commentating against Sevenoaks, and Greg Baxter obviously very affectionately remembers Rich George from his first time. He was desperate for a Rich George goal. Didn't see one. Was devastated, and Rich George made a public apology on social media last night to Greg and said that he's going to try and make up for it today. Well, can he do that in this last 10 minutes? We're about to find out. What a ball from Rich George. Oh, it had already gone out. Never mind.
Yeah, but still, the intent was there. Worth noting, Rich George sits currently on 95 league goals, all scored in the Premiership. 5 more, he will join that coveted Century Club. Amir Ali sits on 98 Premiership goals. Bobby Allen ticked over into 50 yesterday, so some huge milestones being achieved in Game Week 2, or certainly being chased.
Bobby Allen, good to see him back out on the court. He's had a very difficult year in terms of surgeries and stuff that's been well documented online, but back doing what he loves, playing Powerchair football. Rich George fires a shot at the near post. Good effort from George. Goes out for a corner. Interesting that Rich George has managed to gain himself sort of that role as the first sub over Jordan Williams. That's a bit of a battle within the Aspire squad at the moment.
Yeah, it's a dilemma that will be an interesting one to observe, but it's a good problem to have when you've got those more fringe players really fighting for selection. John Bolden hasn't shied away from stating that Tom Kelly, Dan McClellan and John Dixon are kind of his starting teammates, and it's on Sally McNeil, Jordan Williams and Rich George to really pressure that starting 4 as John Bolden tries to switch it out to Rich George.
I honestly think it's a massive positive within a squad when you know you're starting 4. I don't really believe in the competition for places argument. I think it can cause people in the squad to become unsettled and feel like that unnecessary pressure. You know, if they're starting, they need to perform, otherwise they're going to be replaced. I really do think that having a settled starting 4, like you saw with Teesside last season, like Aspire this season, like West Brom when they were very dominant, they had that 4 of Dylan.
You say that, I still think Aspire are probably one of the only teams that have a solid starting 4, like a guaranteed starting 4. Bobby Allen hits it with the 180. Because even Teesside, they rotate between Greg Baxter and Alistair Hay. Greenbank are constantly trialling and testing, likewise with Newcastle, who that 4th winger is. So I think Aspire is the only one that's kind of a dead cert as to how you think and know they'll start the competitive games. Dave Lewis appealing for the yellow card. And whilst Aspire look comfortable, there is still just a single goal in this game. Hamza Madir comes over to take. Bobby Allen's taken a position in the box, closely hugged by Dan McClellan. Ian Harley just stops his watch to have a word with John Balding and Dave Lewis. Just tells them that they can play the football or they can go off, and they're constantly arguing as play now continues. It's getting fiery. Dave Lewis looks for that gap behind John Balding. There's definitely respect there.
Yeah, there was a bit of a laugh, like they did a shut up, you shut up, and like laughed at each other. And it's a good, you love to see it. John Balding wouldn't be getting involved if he wasn't enjoying it, and neither would Dave Lewis. They know what they're doing and putting on a great show for us, because we had front row seats for that one.
Final 4 minutes. Spire still with that narrow 1-0 lead. As Bobby Allen tries to dispossess Dan McClellan, down to Rich George, who just flicks it towards Amir Ali in the Villa goal.
Good decision. I was worried that he was going to try and play back into Dan McClellan there, and that would have maybe opened them up to a counter-attack. Risk would have been risky. They weren't locked up in their shape.
.30 seconds left on court A. Teesside look as if they've done just enough to secure 3 points against fellow title chasers Greenbank. Good work from Bobby Allen, but an Aspire ball.
Been a difficult game this for referee Ian Harley. I agree that I think the contact threshold that the officials has picked was the right one. Very good at that in England.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've experienced a whole host of different interpretations and different levels of leniency, but we always enjoy the English way of playing the most, because it facilitates as much open football as is possible. As John Balding tries to switch, 180 from Hamza Madir, fired. Allowed to settle that. Controlled nicely by Dan McClellan, but too high. The right decision, I think, from Ian Harley. That.
Yeah, it's one of those where, I guess, I don't think the ball, I always think if the ball goes over someone, but it's sort of just like bounced up away, but yeah, when it gets that high, you sort of do have to stop it, I guess. 2 minutes remain. Will there be late drama?
Full time on court A. Teesside have secured the win. I'll bring up the live league standings at the conclusion of this one as Pete Taylor waves his flag in the air. Dan McClellan now deemed the aggressor. It's amazing that we haven't seen a single yellow card in this game.
Yeah, I think the issue is, if he started booking someone, he's then going to have to book like 3 other people.
Precedent, isn't it? It's
you know, Humza's probably had a few, Dave's had a few, Dan and John have both had a few on an Aspire perspective.
I have to say, for the most part, beyond a few corners that could have gone the other way, it's been fantastic officiating.
Yeah, been well managed. And I think especially what Ian Harley did really well was manage when the players were when there was that little argument between John Balding and Dave Lewis. He managed that really well.
Just trying to understand what the decision is. Signalled in Villa's favour by Pete Taylor. Very late substitute. We'll see Jordan Williams enter, I suspect in place of Dan McClellan.
Dan McClellan, really not happy with that decision. We didn't really have a great view of that. But he wasn't happy with the contact given against him.
Final 10 seconds. Jordan Williams into the box. Was a real opportunity that from Dan McClellan. I don't think it will matter a great deal in the grand scheme of things, but probably expect him to do better. Pick off from Dan McClellan, goes wide.
It's been a very good game, this. The crowd have been loving it above us. It's been exactly what you want from a competitive Powerchair football match.
Yeah, absolutely. Into Dave Lewis. Dan McClellan now is going to just try and manage the game into additional time, nearly a minute, and that will conclude the game. Aspire get the job done. Wasn't overly vintage, but it was effective, and they maintained their fantastic momentum in the 25-26 standings. Still yet to concede, I believe, which is something no other team is able to boast. Top of the table with 22 points from their opening 8 games. Teesside, Greenbank and West Brom all have a game in hand, leads with 2 games in hand. The most they'll be able to do is close that gap to just a single point, but it's good for Aspire. And not just that, Dan McClellan has now somewhat of a buffer at the top of the top goal scorer charts with 11. Thank you to all that have tuned in, to myself and Charlie. Next up on Court B in Game Week 2 of the 25-26 Slater and Gordon Premiership, we have West Bromwich Albion Throstles versus West Bromwich Albion.